We will be right with you, folks. Well, welcome everybody to tonight's webinar. Tonight we will have a webinar teaching on LEDs versus LEDs. Now that's a strange title, and I hope you'll be able to learn some more about this. So everyone who tunes in during the month of June, every time you tune in, your ballot goes in. And so if you come through 4 times during the month, you get 4. So you get 4 ballots put in. And we will be drawing for a Palm Ultimate to give to somebody. It's a $1,300 device, and it does absolutely fantastic things for the body. So at this point, I'm going to ask that we start with our video. Go ahead, Jim.
PBM stands for Photobiomodulation. Photo being light, bio being biology, and light, well, light coming from some kind of source. In this case, PBM is used to help stimulate healing in the body, whether it's an LED, whether it's a laser, whether it's a sun, but that light comes through the skin layers, and actually the cells are able to absorb that light, converting it to energy, and then there's a host of different processes that are stimulated because of that light. So you can speed up healing, you can do different things that is very beneficial for the cells themselves, for healing, for reduction of inflammation, and a host of other things. Kerber USA is a company that we have set up to promote healing for the US and around the world. We would like to see this technology help a lot of people. We use LED technology where we can provide high amounts of light into the body, and that stimulates healing. I'd like to introduce you to the SunPowerLED Palm Ultimate. This device here has the most power of the series of devices. This light can produce a huge amount of light that can enter into the body and help speed up that healing. In this device, we have 2 different wavelengths. It's 660 nanometer, and as you can see, it's very bright, but it's very effective. You will cause a systemic effect with this wavelength of light. The other wavelength is 810. It's not very visible, but it penetrates very deep, and that can help as well reach the target that you're trying to reach. The main part about this light is that we have the power behind it and the large surface area that can reach very deep into the body. We believe that our product is the most powerful LED cluster under the sun. We have specification of this device of 150 milliwatts per square centimeter, and that is over this entire area of 40 square centimeters. It also provides a wall of light that comes through the skin and is able to reach depths that have never been able to be done before with other light products on the market. There's an interesting biblical passage in Malachi 4:2 that talks about the healing that comes from the rays of the sun. And that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to provide healing with these rays. PBM has also been shown in various studies to be able to help promote healing in wounds such as diabetic ulcers, venous ulcers, and other areas where cuts or burns or other types of wounds are on the skin level. If you have any questions about PBM and how our light device, the SunPowerLED Palm series, can help you, please reach out to us and we'll get back to you as soon as we can.
All right, so what we're going to be talking about tonight is LEDs versus LEDs. And the way I can start off with that is that just like many of you know that one supplement, although it may have similar ingredients, may not stack up at all to something else saying the same similar ingredients. And it's because how they put it together, what other fillers are being used, other things that your body might react to. So one would be absolutely fantastic for what you want to do, and the other one is not good at all. And when it comes to LEDs, there's and LED devices, that's something that's similar that goes on, is how is the person that made this device, how did they design it? What did they do to, did they work on shortening the design process, making it as low cost as they could possibly make it? All of these things affect how the performance of that LED. So even if they bought exactly the same LED, one LED could work really, really well, and the other LED could not work so well. So an example that I can give you in engineering is that if an LED is running at a certain temperature, it gives out a certain amount of light, okay? So we'll say at 40 degrees Celsius, it has this amount of light. Well, as the temperature goes to 60 degrees Celsius, or maybe we could say for those in Fahrenheit, once you go to 120 degrees Fahrenheit, the output drops a bit. And as you go to 140 degrees, the output even drops a little bit more. And if you go to 160 degrees, the output can drop even more. So that same LED, even though they're identical LEDs, one running hotter will give you less output. So that has a great effect on when you're trying to treat the body. That's one of the ways that even if the LED was running at exactly the same power, exactly the same current, one LED will work well, the other LED will not work well. So it for your body and for the device itself, and also for the actual what it's trying to do. Now, I had a very early experience with power, and I'm going to bring in power at this point in time. Power is what comes out of the device, optical power. So there's two types of power that is going in that people aren't thinking of, okay? There is the power, sorry, just give me one split second. There we go. There is the power that goes into this plug here. And what happens is that there's a device in between. There's different types of devices. I'll just pick one off my desk here. There's like little power adapters or power cubes, and there's a power that goes into it, and then there's a power that comes out of it. So it's the efficiency of this particular device. So if a certain amount goes in, say it's 30 watts, and the best that comes off of here is 20 watts, that means that 10 watts is coming off of this device, making it hot. meaning that you only got 20 watts to work with, even though it says in the specifications that it draws 30 watts of power. So many devices, I'll get into that, but many devices out there will tell you how much power is going in. They're not telling you what the power is that's coming out of the adapter. That's number one. And number two is when it goes into the LED, it's how much of that power is actually being realized within the LED, because the steps in between, there can be a number of different inefficiencies. And then as it goes out of that, it is what is the optical power? What is the light that comes out? Light energy. How much is that? So you may start off with, let's say 100% is what you're putting in. But by the time you're finished, depending on the manufacturer, you may only get 15% of what they've put on the label on the outside, and they quote it, and they'll put it on these little labels, and they say this device is 30 watts. Wow, that's impressive. They might even put a model number. This is model number LED 30W, and everybody thinks, oh, 30 watts. Wow, that's got a lot of power. That's really what might be going into this device if they're fully using it. And then what is left that's actually coming out the other end? So many people understand this with automotive. You have a lot of power in gasoline. You start off with, let's say that gasoline gives you so much energy, but by the time it comes out the wheels in actual rotation power, it's only 15%, 20% maybe. So it's the inefficiency of going from what's going into the electrical and what's finally coming out as light power. Okay, now when it comes to light power, let's go back a little bit in my life, 15 years ago, when I was working. Prior to that, I developed a device for the dentists to cure the white fillings. And what we found out is that if we, there's something to sometimes pulsing can be beneficial. We're very familiar with pulsing. With the device that we made for the tooth, sometimes reactions can happen extremely quickly. So we would provide a little extra boost, even beyond what the LED was made for. And what that would do is that amount of optical power would be what would cure the filling or harden the filling. And because of the way we designed it, we were actually able to go through a filling material and harden the bottom. You wanted to see how thick of a filling can you harden it. You have to harden the whole filling. So most dentists, they'll put down some of the compound, and then they'll put the light on it and harden it, and then they'll put a little more compound, harden it, because there's losses going through, and they want to make sure the whole tooth is hardened. And so what we did with our devices just made it so that it gave them that extra assurance to penetrate deeper. So there was more energy, light power coming out of our LED. So when I had the opportunity first of meeting a doctor, and that's another side trail I won't go on, but basically I developed something in using very powerful light to activate a drug for cancer stuff, and it's still tied up in research, and I hope someday it'll finally get out there. But there's all sorts of reasons for why it hasn't moved along. But right away in the beginning, I knew that, or I wouldn't have, at that point, I wouldn't have believed that light could do anything on the body. So if you shone it on a person's elbow, I wouldn't have believed it wouldn't have done anything. That was where I was coming from. When I work with engineering, I have to see it work and appear in front of my eyes, and I can confirm that it's doing exactly what I've designed it to do. And a lot of times we go through all sorts of tests to confirm from different angles that it's doing what you want to do, and then under different temperatures. And you want to make sure that when something's running in a hotter environment, it's still working the way you designed it to do. Unless, if there ever is a catastrophic, for some reason something goes wrong, you design things in to make sure that that if it fails, it'll never hurt anybody or do anything like that. So that's the kinds of things we do. But on the early stage, when I developed this light for the cancer stuff, and it was 635 nanometer, which is an orangey red, orangey red color, and that is a little shorter wavelength than our standard palm devices with the 660. So it's 635. So it's harder to penetrate with 635, the orangey red. And so we have to even have more power behind it. So that's what we were working on. And at that point, I had, from an old injury, every year, 2 years, something would happen. I'd pick up a paper clip and all of a sudden you just feel it, ooh, ow, that's not good. And then that would develop into a really bad muscle spasm that would be with me for several months and with extreme pain. So on this one occasion, that came from a fall from a ladder. I don't suggest anybody trying the flying lessons that I did, but I was up on the second floor putting in one of the old windows that we have to use in Canada, where it's you push them in and tighten them in, and every springtime you take them back out again. But the whole idea is that was your storm window to keep the heat in the house. So on one occasion, I pushed the window in from the second floor height, and my ladder took off, and I landed on concrete. And thankfully I didn't break anything, but I did definitely hurt my back, and that would show up every year, 2 years. So now roll that ahead to about 15 years ago or 16 years ago now. Once again, I was working on this powerful cancer light at 635 nanometer, and I put this, I thought, I'm in so much pain. I put it behind my back in the chair and had it pointing at my back. And it was a fairly large unit at that point. I very quickly went from this big to this big to this big. And so it was doing a very high amount of energy on my back. And I was so shocked that in about 20 minutes, that pain had gone from like a screaming 8 down to like a 3. And I could get up and I could even bend over, which I couldn't do without killing myself, basically. And that was my eye opener. Up until that point in time, I didn't believe light therapy could do anything. But in the process, then, now for the LEDs at that time were like $70 a piece. They were very expensive for a high power LED. So if I was to try and make something like this, if I could have at that time, it would have put it way out of the range of anybody being able to purchase it. So then I was looking at ways of how can we have a light source that would be powerful enough for home use. I could understand for cancer use, it wouldn't matter if the device costs $100,000 if it can treat cancer, with this specific drug, working with the doctor and that. If that could work, well, that didn't matter with the cost of it. But when we're talking of people that could be fine for a clinic, specialized cancer clinic. But when it comes to chiropractors, physios, home use, it would have been far too expensive for me to use LEDs at that point for that application for pain and inflammation. But I truly, once I saw it for myself, I says, okay, we got to make a light for pain and inflammation. So I did a lot of experimentation pretty quick and looked at all sorts of things. As soon as I saw how much of a difference I saw on my back, I says, this has got to be used in every clinic. This is gonna revolutionize the world. Using a light like this for all sorts of people with pain and inflammation, if it did that much for me. So there was some stuff out there with people using lasers already. LEDs, like I say, was in its infancy. Back then, LEDs were very limited use, unless, you're just talking the little indicator light, but it was not much in the line of power. And lasers were the only light source around. Expensive, but that was the only light source to do any of this kind of stuff. So when it came to trying to use it with LEDs, there just wasn't the application. So I was looking at all different kinds of light sources, and I'll explain why this is, very shortly, I'll explain why this is so important to what I've learned almost 15 years ago for pain treatment and inflammation treatment. So I worked with putting a halogen bulb. Everybody knows that a halogen bulb, those ones you had in the ceiling, if you put your hand in front of it, you burn your hand in no time. That's because of the far infrared coming from that light source. I really felt that looking at all different types of light sources, a halogen bulb was the closest to the sun, but unfortunately, it was also the hottest. It was also not that terribly expensive to work with. So I thought, this is something that I can make large versions of and treat a whole back and that. So, but the problem again was, how do you get rid of that far infrared that heats up the surface of the skin? So some of you out there have heard of far infrared saunas. They make you feel wonderful. They help you sweat. Great for getting rid of toxins. But as far as penetration, there's no penetration. It's extremely thin what it can go into the skin, because the far infrared, these are wavelengths far beyond 3,500 nanometer, will be totally absorbed by the water in your skin. And so I came up with, I was looking at halogen. I talked to University of Toronto, McMaster University in their optics divisions, looking at how can I get rid of the far infrared, because if I could take that bulb and get rid of all the far infrared, I could bring it real close, and now it could do treatment. And so I really believe this was one of the times in my life where I was racking my brain as to how could I filter that far infrared out of the beam so it could be used as treatment using a normal halogen bulb, halogen or halogen, however you pronounce it. Anyway, so I kid you not, folks, I was in the shower early one morning, and I heard this very clearly. It was, have you thought of the vapor canopy theory? Now, the vapor canopy theory, and it just kind of, oh, maybe I'll try something with that. Vapor canopy theory was that there's a theory that the whole Earth was in the upper atmosphere was covered with a thin layer of water. Now, some would say it's absolutely impossible. I don't know, but I can, if it was possible, there's some really neat benefits to having that layer of water up in the atmosphere, which would filter out far infrared, which would make it feel much more even heating on the surface of the Earth. You wouldn't have storms. It's just beautiful. But anyways, that very thin layer of water, if that was up there, that was a theory that I learned probably 20 years earlier than 15 years ago, so 35 years ago. Just like, hey, what if I took that halogen bulb and put a water in front of it, a layer of water, just like this vapor canopy theory coming from Genesis 1:3, where he says he separated the waters from the waters. So water from water, called the space sky. So there was that layer up in there, if that's the case, if that's the right understanding of that. So I took two of my wife's lasagna dishes and I put them back to back like this, and I put silicone around it. I committed her dishes and different things she had in the kitchen for my research. So she lost 2 lasagna dishes that day. I did replace them. But anyways, I round lasagna dishes, and I put the two pieces together, put silicone around it, and that space in between, I filled. It was about, let's say, that diameter. I filled it half full in between with about just that much water in between the two layers. And when I took the light bulb and I shone it through the air above it, it was burning hot. So I was going through two layers of glass and that little airspace between the two. But as soon as I lowered the bulb down and it was focused forward, this is one of those little focused bulbs, all the far infrared heat disappeared. And all of it, and all you had then was beautiful feeling of energy coming into the body. So that would be, instead of the skin, the water in the skin absorbing that, all of that was absorbed ahead of it. I got patents on it, and this is a long story, but there's something really important I want you to learn from this. So this is the first, one of the first devices that I made using a halogen bulb. It's a 50-watt bulb in here, and there's actually a layer of water in here. And I wished I could show you the actual water. I don't, okay, can somebody see that little thing across here? This is slightly low. There's you can see some water. There's actually a layer of water in a containment in here. And then what happens is the light shines through that and absorbs all that heat. And I have cooling coming out of the first ones I made about 50 of these devices using Conair hair dryers from Walmart. I took out all the guts and put the bulb inside and filtered. This is Inventor 101. You just keep trying to figure out how to do it. And so I put this, I was able to make a canister out of copper with two glass windows, and then I knew I had to start taking the heat away right away, because as the water expands, or it'll literally blow up. So we put safeties in here so it wouldn't happen. I ended up calling this the Genesis Health Light to refer back to Genesis, but it helped. This device helped so many people. But the first ones I made were with a 50-watt bulb, and they were with this Conair hair dryer. And then we built a team, a separate company, and we built this nicer looking unit with the bulb and the cooling, everything in here. But the nice thing about this device is I could put that power up to my skin and have a high amount of optical power, just like we have with the Palm Light. Now, as you can see, this is pretty heavy and this is pretty light. This has about 5 optical watts of power, approximately 5 optical watts of power, and we have had 15 years of results with this device. But very early on, this is the key point of this. I know I kind of come around it to get to this point, but the bulb that the first bulb I used was Philips it's from Holland, and it's very good quality bulbs. Anyways, the bulb had beautiful results, and I sold it to one anesthesiologist, and he must have bought about 30 of the units off of me of the hair dryer. And then what happened, so and I just thought I'd show you here, just to give you an idea of the light power. So you can, well, actually that's the super pump. But it's hard to tell, but you can see this one just covers a little bit bigger area. But anyways, he had really good results, this anesthesiologist, with his pain clinic. He was basically turning over the lights. He was a really good medical doctor, and he would turn over the lights to his patients for them to use this light, and had a lot of good results. And then when we came up with this newer design, which looks so much sharper, he bought 100 of them off of us. And then after a couple months, he says, "Tom, I don't know what's going on, but I wanted you to go back to the old design for me. I want to use the old design. So that was very confusing. Why couldn't he get good results with this unit compared to, compared to the old hairdryer model that I had, even though they were both 50-watt bulbs? Turned out that yes, just like I described, 50 watts. If you put a meter, I have all sorts of special meters. If you put a meter on it and you measured how much electrical power was it drawing into the plug, it was 50 watts. Both of them the same, right? So if they're both halogen bulbs, they're both burning 50 watts, wouldn't that give you the same results? No. So one halogen bulb and another halogen bulb does not mean you get the same results, even if they burn the same amount of energy. Nothing much has changed, even with LEDs. It doesn't matter what they say, it's what comes out that's important. And in his case, when I went to, I didn't have all the fancy equipment I have now, and fancy measurement equipment. That's pretty expensive too. I went to McMaster University and we did the light measurements. And the problem with this unit was it was actually putting out half the power out of this device. And he was not getting the results with half the power as he was with my previous device. So what I ended up doing, and we ended up switching out all the bulbs that they used, because it turned out it was the bulb. Even though it drew 50 watts of bulb energy, it was highly inefficient because it wasn't focused properly. It was lots of energy was being lost through the way they made that bulb in China compared to the bulbs that are made in Holland with Philips. So it does make a huge difference how much energy comes out of the unit. So you can buy all sorts of devices on the market that are LED based. And the key is, are you going to get enough power, okay, out of it? The other thing is power density. So power density is like, if I took some of the devices out there that they claim they have so much power, let's say they claim they have 5 watts of power over this whole area, okay? That means in a spot this size, there's only so much energy, and they say that's milliwatts per square centimeter. Okay, how much energy, how much wattage, how much optical power is in 1 square centimeter? But if you spread that 5 watts over this whole area, that amount in that small area will be low. As you do with what I've done with my devices, is put a lot of LEDs close together, then I end up with a much, much higher amount of energy density. So you're kind of squeezing that down to a much smaller area. That's not easy to do. You have to have the proper cooling that's going on inside. I have patent pendings on this. I have a number of patents now to my name on different ways that I've worked on cooling and this whole thing with cancer treatment and you name it. And on these devices, how I'm cooling it is extremely important, because we're condensing the amount of these LEDs closer together. And when you do, that makes could make this whole area much hotter. If they get hotter, then the light is going to be less. So what we're doing is we've got a very unique design where we're putting a certain amount of air pressure through this whole thing to make sure that the LEDs on this board are sitting at the 45 degrees Celsius. And so we have maximum light output. They're not running way up at 80 degrees Celsius and then dropping. Another thing is you can buy LED bulbs. Some have asked me, well, I bought an LED bulb and it's supposed to last a long time and it just died on me. Well, you might have bought it from a dollar store or from some kind of discount store or something. And when you don't spend the dollars for a proper LED bulb, several things go wrong. And that one of them is they don't cool them right because they cheap out on it. They try and nickel and dime it down till they get every last cent out of it. And in doing so, the LEDs are stressed, running at this much higher temperature, and then they die. And they don't care the fact that you're going to replace your bulb in 6 months or a year. With our LEDs, we run them at 45 degrees C. So that in that case, what happens is these LEDs are super happy. If LEDs could be happy, these are happy LEDs because they're only running at 45 degrees C, which is about, I'll say 110, 115 degrees Fahrenheit, which is a fine, really nice temperature for electronics, especially like LEDs like this. It's when you start putting them up at the higher temperatures that they end up with a shorter life. And like I say, not only shorter life, but it's also it also means that the energy coming out of it. So you may see the devices out there with LEDs, and this has got beautiful little LEDs in here, okay, in this device. But the challenge is that when I turn this thing on, and I take even a normal piece of paper here, nothing special, this is a regular piece of 8.5 by 11, and I put it up there, guess what? You're seeing only energy right here where my finger is. You're only seeing energy right there, okay? So if I take one of my expensive meters and I do the measurement and I go right on top of that, oh wow, look at how powerful it is. And let's say they said, oh, it gives you 150 milliwatts per square centimeter. So there's a little opening on this thing that measures. The problem is, as soon as I move it a little away, that energy drops way down to nothing. Well, until you start getting into the focused beam that's coming out of this device. Now, we have a comparison chart on our research site, on the research tab, to show you this. So you can see that there's these spots of light, okay? And how many LEDs do we have? We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 over this larger area. Okay, 6 LEDs at that wavelength. Okay, there's 12 on here, but they light up 6 on one wavelength and 6 on the other. Reason you do that, let's say on an 810 or 1050, whatever, or 810, 850, whatever the other wavelength is they cheap out. They use only half the LEDs they could use, number one. And number two is that you only get half the power then of the wavelength that you want. But then again, it's also spread out over this whole area. When you take one of my devices here and you put it on there, what the difference is this whole area is a high amount of optical power that if I take my measurement tool and move it across here, it's all high power, right from one end, right to one edge to the other edge. So internally, instead of having 6 LEDs in over that whole area that you see in this hand here, I have in this, depending on the power level that the model that you're dealing with, is we have 10 or 12 LEDs in a much closer area. And that every one of these LEDs is made in such a way that as I move my light meter across here, the special light meter, as I move it across the whole area, anywhere around this whole area, I turned the unit off so you could see it, but anywhere I move it, it's all the same. It's one big wall of light that's coming, as opposed to some dimples of light coming out of something like this. Doesn't matter if you have one that's this big or bigger yet. If you don't have the density, like what I learned even with this device, if you're half the power, you may not get half the results. You may get 10% of the results or no results at all. Sure, you might want to then have to use the unit for 2 hours to get the treatment that may be enough to do what needs to happen. But that's why we've developed this, where we have the LEDs really close, where the power is very high, which took in the learning that I had with this older device. That power, optical power, makes a huge difference. Wavelength is also important. Now this is a little different unit in that it has wavelengths from through the more of the visible band up to 1300 nanometer. Our LED devices are specific at specific wavelengths that we know are quite beneficial. So the 660 nanometer, the 810 nanometer, or in this case, this one here is the 1050. So you can't even see this with my eye. All I see is the one red indicator light. But if I bring it up close, you can see that the camera is picking this up, but I can't see it. That's 1050 nanometer. 1050 nanometer helps us get even a little deeper into the area. When we're talking the 810, it's a little less in penetration, but I can see this just like you can see it. This doesn't look quite as purple, but it's not purple looking. It's actually like a reddish, little bit of a red color from each LED, but doesn't look very much, but I can feel the energy right now. It's quite intense coming out of this device, and it's going into the palm of my hand, through my palm of my hand. And I'll show you something here now that I can turn off the lights here. I made it a certain way. If I turn on the red, you can see the red going right through my hand. As a matter of fact, if I push on the tissue a little bit, you can see it even coming through here. That's the wavelength of 660 nanometer, okay? And it would still be providing benefit, although it's not super bright on this side, it still would be providing benefit on this side. When it comes to the 810 or the 1050, what I'm running right now, if I took an infrared camera, you would see this just blowing, like just beaming out of here. But this camera doesn't pick up that wavelength, so you can't see it. Like, it picks it up a little bit, but not very, very tiny amounts. It has to be a different type of infrared camera. But if it would, then what you would see is a purplish glow. And no, it's not working. But sorry, I try it one more time. First, I don't know if you'll see a purplish glow out of it. No, you can't see it. But anyways, if you had the right camera, you'd be able to see that. So just to give you an idea, some of the companies out there, they'll buy a light meter off of Amazon for about $200, maybe even $100, and they are not lab accuracy. They don't measure things correctly. They really are good to measure just how much light is in this room. Oh yeah, okay. It does not measure how much optical power is coming out unless you spend the big bucks. And when you spend the big bucks, you can actually set in. So this happens to be a Thor Labs unit. You're talking by the time you buy a couple sensors in this, you spent $3,000. So yeah, so if we look at that close, I can actually in here. Okay, I'm gonna just try. Right here, it says the wavelength, and I'm trying to get it to focus for you, but I can change the wavelength here that is measured, okay? So I can get a very accurate measurement on the power of that. But then I have in the other room, I have even more expensive equipment to measure very accurately every wavelength that I'm measuring and know exactly, giving me a plot of the different wavelengths and seeing how much power is at each wavelength. Now I'm just wondering if I have one of those sheets here. No, I don't. But, oh, yeah, I do. So, okay, this happens to be 950 nanometer. This is one of the, so I can measure, this is 1,000 nanometer over here, 900, 850, 700, or 800, 700, 600. So what this graph I was able to do the measurements on is see that there's absolutely nothing of coming out of the wave, out of the LED, except when you get over to 850 nanometer. And you can see that the wavelengths is pretty broad. Like it's not like a laser. If you were to look at the same thing with a laser, it'd be one line going up, a very narrow line. In this case, it's showing you all the wavelengths before 850. And so in this case, this device is actually putting out some wavelengths even as low as 900 and as high as 1,000 nanometer, even though it's a 950 nanometer LED. If I looked at red LEDs, I could see it again, you would see another peak going up and over. Sorry, it is extremely hard when you got a screen that's flipped 180 degrees to try and draw a straight line. But anyways, you would see a similar curve, much narrower, down here at the 600 nanometer or 700 or 800. So we can measure up to 11, just below 1100 nanometer with my device, and that costs thousands and thousands of dollars to buy that equipment. But in order to do what I'm doing, I have to know what it is our devices are. I'm not guessing. So we're knowing that we've been able to calibrate this equipment so we know what we're talking about. And if that Genesis light that you saw, what would happen is that you would see the light power just going very, very wide. Sorry, this is very wide in this whole area and then coming down. So try to do that again like this, and then it goes straight across and comes down again. So that's what the halogen bulb does. It's very wide, but then we filtered away all the 1300 nanometer. So this gives you just a little insight on the differences between different LEDs and how you're driving them. And we have a very good thing I'm going to show, and then I'll get into your questions. I'm going to take over here, folks, for a minute. Let's do this. So I'm going to take host, claim host. Okay, so I'm going to go here. Just give me a moment. I'm going to grab something I want to show you guys. Okay. Okay, so let's try and share the screen here. See if it. Okay, that would be. Oh yeah, there we go. And share. So we'll hope this comes up okay. I'm going to. I hope it did. Okay, share screening. Okay. Exit that. Okay, I'm actually going to borrow this for a minute here. So I'm hoping, let me just put this to full screen. There we go. So this is one thing I meant to pop up, and I had a little technical difficulty. But if you look at the right-hand side, I'm hoping that you can see this screen okay. It says tonight's webinar. On the right-hand side, you see that the LEDs are placed very far apart. And so they provide little donuts of light coming down into the skin. What we're doing is really with the SunPowerLED brand and lineup is we have the LEDs much, much closer together, running them at a power that they can run, and then they all overlap each other. So when they overlap each other because of scattering in the skin, it actually ends up being much, much deeper penetration of a given amount of optical power. And that's why we have the LEDs close together and really increase that power density. So if you did on the right-hand side, I think it's on the right-hand side of your screen, you would see if you put the light meter right in the center of this thing, you'd say, oh my gosh, it's the same power as the SunPowerLEDs. But the problem is it's missing all that area in between, which really reduces the amount of energy that you get at a given depth into the tissue. And again, it's very, very important that now I'm hoping you see my main screen here, and I want to show you something under research. I'm just going to pull up my chats for a sec. Yeah, in this, and if I went back to that, yeah, okay. So if we went under research and we scroll down, I gotta just move something here. You see well-being, let there be light. That was something that Dr. Robert Malone had wrote up on our devices. You can see PBM research database. That is excellent. There's over 7,500 research articles in that database. Join the conversation. There's other things in here. The PBM Foundation is excellent to go to. Here, the penetration chart shows the differences between the three units, the Palm Pro, the Ultimate, and the Super Palm. So all of them have the red bar. Please. Oh, okay. We'll do that. Okay. All of those, as you can see, all three versions have the 660 nanometer. But you see that the Palm Ultimate has a little more power. And then the Super Palm has the same power as the on the red. But the difference being is that we have more, so the Ultimate has more 810 nanometer power than the Professional. And then what we have is, and this helps to get a little deeper penetration. This is illustrative, okay? And then the black, we're using the black bar as representing the 1050 nanometer, which you can't see. So it's totally dark for our eyes. But as you can see, the possibility of penetrating a little deeper yet with the 1050 is there. And we're showing you this, you see the rainbow below with the black on the right, 300 nanometer to your left, that's ultraviolet. That can be harmful, although 297 nanometer is very beneficial for creating vitamin D production. You have 400 nanometer is just getting out of that in the violet area. Then blue comes in at 465. Blue can also be hard, like UV is something that can be damaging to the skin. But when we're talking of operating not in green, not in red, like in the low reds, we're talking red or near infrared at the 1100 nanometer, at 1050 nanometer, you can definitely get a lot deeper. Now, let me end. It's very, very safe on that end. And there's a picture of an eye there. Basically, our eyes respond to the 400 to 700 nanometer range. Okay. I'm going to hope that this is going to, okay, I might have to stop share. I'm going to find out in a minute. Okay, can everyone see a comparison right now? Now I'm going to try and get this full size. And is the comparison chart coming up? Okay, just give me a moment. Okay, so I'm going to just do a little favor for my competitors. There's different light units out here. And what I want to show you is the palm light is the left-hand column, and then to the far right is other devices, similar to what I was showing you. But when you look at how many LEDs, I want to point you to the green that's highlighted there. So the green says that for 10 by 10 squares, so 10 centimeters by 10 centimeters, that's roughly 4 inches by 4 inches. We have the equivalent density of LEDs as 30 LEDs per 4 inches per 4 inches. So when we look at our competitors, this one in particular, again, LEDs versus LEDs. These LEDs, you'd think, my gosh, they got 123 LEDs per 100 the same area. But it turns out that those are very, very low power LEDs in that they're not high power LEDs, okay? So that's one unit out there that you can spend easily with the other pieces that come with it, 10 times that which of our device. And if we go all the way to the far right, we're looking at another device there that has 10 LEDs per 100 square centimeters. So it gives you an idea, even if we said that these LEDs were putting out the same power, which I doubt very much, especially with some of the measurements we have made, it's certainly not comparing apples to apples. So when we're looking here, our device is, let's say the red is 6,500 milliwatts, the near infrared is 7,500 milliwatts. On the other competitor model, the next one over, you see is only 140 milliwatts in the red and 360 in the near infrared. So very low amount of optical power. There is another device there that's like $8,000. It has, at least it has 7.5 watts or 7,500 milliwatts in the red. And they have blue power and everything mixed in, but you can pay $8,000 for that device and still not have the effect that we're having with some stuff. So although that might be similar. And then the last device here, so if we're looking at, they got about it's estimated that they have around 2 watts optical and not 7.5 watts optical. So it gives you some idea of what we're doing. So when it comes to that power density, we have in our device, the irradiance is 162 milliwatts per square centimeter. You can see the others are not half. Remember I told you how much difference it is between, half the power out of it. It just does not make any, as much difference. Well, here, this is, a tenth of that power or less. So, or 20th, I guess it is. So you can spend money on other devices, but you won't get the power density or the optical power. So we have our, I know we're going a bit over here, but we got in the, with our left-hand side, we have our mini canopy. We have 63 optical watts of power, and that's again key to try and make things happen. And here there's 8.7 milliwatts for this other device that you can get. You can, other devices here. Again, the takeaway is if you go back to that, how many LEDs per 100 square centimeters? We have 25 LEDs per 100 square centimeters. Remember, that's the same number of LEDs we have on our Palm device, because we want to keep the energy density high to get the effect that we want people to get better. We don't want them just to buy equipment for buying equipment's sake. We want to get that to happen. So if you looked at the other one, you got 5.1 LEDs per 100 square centimeters. That's 1/5 of the number of LEDs, okay? And then we go over to the very far right, and you see that they have 17.6 LEDs per 100 square centimeters. But what they've done is they've mixed all different wavelengths together all at the same time. And the thing is, then they're only a small amount of power on the desired wavelength that you want to try and work with. So that's why it's very, very important. You can go back to this diagram. You're welcome to come to us to ask questions. Go to info@sunpowerled and .com, and we'll gladly answer questions. So again, when we come back to the large canopy, we have a device that has extremely high number of LEDs per 100 square centimeters. And that is what makes the difference to help you get better. So anyways, you can come back to this at your leisure. Go on to our research page, and I'm going to just stop share now. There you go. Okay, I'm back, and we're just going to wrap up with a few questions here quickly. And so let's see. Okay. Oh, people have asked me about this before too. Lumens. Lumens is something that is a light measurement, and it's really what is the white. It's to do with how much light is in a room. How many lumens do you have that lights up a room? And that includes all the wavelengths balanced out in such a way that it's kind of white, depending on how many kelvins you have. You could have warm light is in around the 2500 to 3000 kelvins, where cool light is way up at 5000, 6000 kelvins. Looks kind of bluish on one end and more reddish on the other. But lumens are not a good way of measuring power when you're trying to measure power for treatment and optical power in that. Okay, so, people have asked, I wanted to bring this webinar together because I felt I'm getting so many questions, because we're seeing a lot of stuff out there, and that will not give you what you need to get your knee better, your ankle better, your treat inside your lungs, treat areas in the mouth. We have also the device that snaps on our device so that you can treat inside the mouth. So I really hope this has been helpful to you. I'd like to, Jim, if you want to get the Tom Talk 2 video, we're going to close with that. But I really hope that you're able to, okay, just 1 second here. Jim, you're good? Okay. I really hope this webinar has helped you in understanding the differences, because there's a lot of LEDs. It's just like there's a lot of different cars out there. There's 4-cylinder cars, and there's 8-cylinder cars, and 6. What will get you there fastest? Well, 8 or 12 cylinder cars.
15 years back, I realized that light could make a huge difference on the body. I ended up designing this very powerful light using LED technology. With this amount of very high power density, it can reach through the tissues and travel right to the joints. But the key is that the power density and the area is extremely important to deliver that light into that. The mitochondria receives that light and converts that energy into the cell. So it's like giving the cells super high octane fuel, and they run like a jet, and they're able to do all the things for repair in that. What are the products we device, which is actually large when it comes to light therapy. You have a fairly large area of light and a high power density that can be used for different parts of the body, like your finger, shoulder, back, neck, knees, ankle, anywhere on the body. And then we have what's called the mini canopy, which is about a foot square in size. And then we have our full-size canopy, which is basically 6 of the mini canopies. And then we have another device, which is the helmet, and that device can help for mental issues, for brain injuries, for concussions, for PTSD, TBI, all of those kinds of things. And there's new research out there that shows it could be helpful for not only strokes, but dementia, Alzheimer's, and Parkinson's, and just different brain issues. Our plans are to move this technology into every area of the world where there's pain and inflammation, which is basically everywhere, and to expand that so people understand all the applications where this technology can be used to help them in their health in the body as a wellness device. People are looking for how they can treat themselves without drugs.
Okay, so we welcome everybody next Tuesday evening. We will, and also on July 9th, we'll have a special guest talking about how light therapy has helped her knee. She's headaches, dizziness, brain fog. There's just so many applications for the light, as was mentioned in the video. But I want to thank everyone for joining us. Remember, next week, please invite your friends, tell them about this light, share the light, okay? Because it may not be directly for them. It may be somebody who's hurting in their own family. So please share the light with everybody. And I just want to ask that you have a wonderful, blessed week. All the best, and bye for now.